Call a meeting to order. We have a special guest this evening in Bill Preston, who is a past trustee as well, but he will make on the delegation, and we hope his co-presenter Diane Lamont joins us as well. But we might start just drawing everyone's attention to the meeting is being recorded and it's underway. I'd like to, off the top, acknowledge that we are meeting this evening on the shared territory of the Sanawas and Qualicum First Nations, and we thank them for allowing us to live, work, and play in this wonderful part of Vancouver Island. I would also like to acknowledge this evening the passing of Barbara Terry. Barbara passed away, and Bill looks a little shocked. Yeah, Barb passed away last Tuesday, I believe. And suddenly, Barbara and her husband, Ian, were very strong community-minded folks in the Coombs-Arrington area. I can say that I met her as a trustee, as a mentor to me. She was incredibly balanced in her thinking, and her love for children and community and things like that came through very strongly in her work. And so we are saddened to know that she has passed. And I know people have reached out to me for details, and Julie, you brought this to our attention. Maybe when you hear a few more details, you can apprise us as well of where things might be for a celebration or memorial. But I know personally of the great work that she did in our district and was a very strong community leader amongst us, but quietly did her work in a very fashionable lady in the way she used to tromp around a lot of her fields on her property and in ditches with gumboots. I remember her going to a meeting with gumboots and then putting on stilettos, but she was a very wonderful person. So it is with sadness. So next to our agenda items, adoption of the agenda, and I believe we have one item to add under new and unfinished business, which would be further discussion by the board on the Qualicum Woods avgas presentation that we received at our last meeting. So with that addition to our agenda, could I have a mover and a seconder? Trustee Austin.
No, I would like to make a change to the agenda.
Okay, Trustee Austin.
I would request that we switch the business arising, presently number 6, with number 10, public questions and comments. This goes to why we are addressing this in our policy, which has not gone through third reading, but I would like an opportunity for the public to have questions and or comments, as well as our partner groups to comment if they wish on the business arising.
Okay, we'll move that to switch that with number 10. Public question period first. Mover and a seconder, please, to adopt the agenda. Thank you, Trustee Kellogg. Second. Adoption of the agenda. Seconder, please. Thank you, Trustee Kurland. All those in favor? Carried. Approval of the consent agenda as presented this evening is just minutes. Mover and a seconder of our consent agenda. Thank you, Trustee Kellogg. Seconded, Trustee Young. All those in favor? Carried. That then would take us to a public question period. Are there any questions of the public? Seeing none, I will move on to Mount Arrowsmith Teachers Association, and I believe Matt Wood sent me regrets yesterday. CUPE local.
Wasn't the presentation first?
Oops, sorry, I jumped right over Bill, but Bill doesn't have his part. Do you want me to wait, Bill, for if Diane joins us? I'm sorry, I jumped ahead in camera today quite quickly. What would you like to do, Bill? You got to go off mute. Off Mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Okay. Yes, sorry. I just had a call from Diana, and she just was unable to manage to get into the meeting. So technological glitch there for
Oh.
her. So,
Oh, I hope it wasn't at our end.
She won't be able to join us. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I jumped right over. Would you like to give a presentation then to us as to how the Brain Wellness Initiative at Qualicum Commons is doing? And
Yes. Yeah, thanks. I'm just sort of, I hadn't heard about our friend passing. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of
hit you a bit. Yeah.
definitely a bit of a shock. She was the one that actually talked me into running for trustee, Barbara. And so, yeah, it's a shock. Okay, sorry. So, so on behalf of the Qualicum Community Education and Wellness Society, that's QCEWS, and in particular, our brain body fitness, what we call side table, which would be like a subcommittee. All the members, we'd like to take this opportunity to express our appreciation and to the Qualicum School District for its provision of the space at the Qualicum Commons, room 12. And in addition to that appreciation, we want to thank David, the custodian there, because he's been just wonderful to and so helpful in everything that we've done there. And just wanted to acknowledge him. I don't even know David's last name, but he just has been really supportive. So the use of the space, along with the operational funding that we received from Spark BC, Social Policy and Research Council of British Columbia, provided us with operational funding. We created a collaboration with the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society and worked with them, and worked with Christie Lab from the University of Victoria. And they provided a tool, piece of equipment called a NeuroTracker, which would take too long to explain. But let me just say, I worked out on the NeuroTracker, and it's the weirdest experience to feel your brain. You know, we're all used to working, you know, say in the gym with weights or whatever, and you can feel particularly the next day, if you haven't worked out for a while, you feel it. But this is the same thing. You actually feel the brain is work because it's got to focus so hard on the balls moving around the screen. Anyways, amazing piece of equipment that was added to the equipment that had already probably at least $25,000 worth of equipment that our community members and health professionals associated with CUES had raised all that money for that equipment. So we brought that equipment into the space. We worked with Nanaimo Brain Injury and including the work with Dr. Brian Christie from University of Victoria. And we completed our pilot project just about 2-3 weeks ago. So that was a 6-month pilot project. The response from participants was, you know, when you add in, you know, agreed, there's 2 top categories. I can't remember right now. But anyways, we had a resounding expression of value and importance to people's lives, the difference it made. That's kind of why I wanted Diana Lamont, because she was a geriatric nurse who was attacked by a patient and resulted in her being incapacitated in a wheelchair, told she'd never walk again. You should see her walk the labyrinth. Holly Carnegie Letcher, occupational therapist, put on the floor in room 12 a labyrinth, and you see her walk that without a cane, without anything. It's absolutely amazing. And since the program has ended, the pilot project has ended, she feels like she made so much progress and she's now deteriorating. And she would have expressed that better than I can, but that was basically her message. So we know that the quality of the programming meets an unmet need. Nobody in the Qualicum district is providing that kind of a service. There used to be someone up in, a physiotherapist up in Deep Bay, I think, that a lot of people used to go to, but there's nothing. There is something similar in Victoria called Move Adapted, but we know the value of the program. We have, when we did the preliminary sort of research, we had a list of 100 signatures of people in the area that would like to have participated. We had a cohort for the opening of the program of 5 of founding members, many of who actually contributed money to equipment. One of them was Diana. So we know that there's a huge need, and so we're finished now what we are calling phase 1 of the development of this project. The results from the pilot have taught us a lot of things. There's some things we need to change. There's some things we need to add to what we've been doing. But we see this in this, what we call phase 2 bridging. We've received some more funding from Spark BC to support an operational continuation of the program. We'd like to have a 6-month extension on the provision of the space as has been provided already. If we have that extension, we also have a trainer, personal trainer, who will come in and will staff it, and we've got the funding to be able to do that. If we have the space, we can run the program over the next 6 months. And the bridge is to phase 3, where we have 2 of the people who participated in the program and been part of Fitness for All, Darwin Fraser, who's in a power chair, and his wife, Linda. And they're in the process of creating a nonprofit society. Brain Body Fitness has already been used as a name, so they have to, their new board that they had the first board meeting last week. But we hope that by March, they will take over and move the project into a long-term sustainable program. So the 6 months will allow us time to bridge from the pilot project to the new nonprofit society, which will still have an association with CEWS, but one of the things that we've learned is that seems to be how our organization works. We call ourselves the mothership.
Mothership, yeah.
And we've given birth to
Yep.
about 4 or 5 nonprofit societies. Into the
Oh.
Woods Early Learning
Yeah.
Childcare Society
Yep.
came out of CUES. The people in Satlam Park, the lodge, they started in CUES, and they're now their own society. So we see Brain Body Fitness, whatever name they choose, that they will pick up and will singularly focus on the building of this program for the long term. So there's probably other things. There's so much to this, but I hope that gives you a sense of where we've been, of what we're hoping to do through support, continued support from the district, from Qualicum School District, and then we will be making some changes and extensions that we think will improve the program. Quickly, one other thing is that I've had some preliminary discussion. Nothing's been established, but it seems to me that in the district, there are OTs and PTs, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, working with kids that need that. One of the conversations was whether it would be possible to use the space and our equipment for kids in the district. Like so far, we've been catering primarily to adults and seniors with all kinds of issues, from stroke recovery to Parkinson's to you name it. And so I think that it's very possible that the space and the equipment could provide services, but we'd have to go
Yeah.
through a process of discussion with special
Yeah.
ed and see
Yeah.
if that is something that made sense.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Great, Bill. We've got some questions here, so I'd
Yeah.
like to let the trustees have an opportunity to have, I think in
Yeah.
summary, the basic aspect of your presentation is the 6-month extension piece to help with the bridging, and that's the essence of it that the board can deal with near the end of our agenda this evening. But I have Carol and the Trustee Kellogg, Trustee Austin, and then Trustee Young. Trustee Kellogg.
Myself. Thank you, Bill, for that presentation. It was really great. It sounds like wonderful things happened
Yes.
through the time of your startup and your first phase, as you call it. I was wondering, can you give me the name of the people that are going to be perhaps starting a society up?
Yeah, it's Darwin Fraser.
Yeah.
And his wife, Linda. And
Okay.
she actually has a different last name, but I don't have
That's
it.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just curious. And
And then
I was wondering, Bill, if and when phase 2 gets up and going, if it would be appropriate for a trustee to come and have a look at all the equipment and that stuff.
Absolutely. We did have an open house, and I'm not sure we communicated that as thoroughly as we should have to the district, so that people could come at that point. But we hope that if we are fortunate enough to have agreement with the board, we think we can actually start by having all the people who were in the pilot back in the space within 2 weeks, the start of January. So we would like to get all those folks back in, because we've been hearing how much they're missing this, and then we'll see if we can
do an open house.
Add, and we will have an open house to that reopening, and that would be a perfect time. I'll make sure that we get an invitation out to trustees.
That's great. So yeah, I'll wait for further discussion with the
Yep.
school district, and thank you very much. It was a beautiful presentation.
So thank you.
Trustee Austin, then Trustee Young.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I think it's marvelous work that you folks are doing. Maybe you mentioned it and I may have missed it, but what was your participation rate for the equipment?
Well, so we had we started with the sort of founding members. There were 5 identified founding members, and we've agreed that they will have lifetime use of the space and the program at no charge, because we will have to develop a fee for service. In the pilot there was no fee, but when we start up again, we will have to ask people, and we'll have a sliding scale so that we don't, hopefully we don't exclude anyone from being able to
Oh, I
participate
see.
that needs
So
it.
those,
So we had 5 that started, and then we added another 10. So the pilot project was for a group of 15. In the space, you probably would never have more than 4 people at most, unless, and we've got some ideas about how we can increase the programming in the space that might change that. But the way we've run it, because whoever the professional who's providing the supervision and in the use of the equipment and everything, we try to have more able-bodied people, maybe 2, 3 more able-bodied people, and then one person who needs a great deal of attention. And any of those people also have to come with, either a partner or someone who is a support person for that person. So we're very careful around the safety issues, because some of the folks that are there, we've had probably 4 to 5 of the 15 who have never, like for years, have never walked, have never got out of a wheelchair. And we have a piece of equipment that we can set them in that will actually hold them up safely, and then they can begin to have the experience of walking. So,
Ambulatory. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
oh.
yeah.
And
do
yeah.
you have, I'm sorry, this is just a follow-up. Bill, do you have a sense, because you mentioned that for phase 2, and maybe perhaps when the society gets going, that you'd like to have some more youth involved. Do you have a sense in our community of how many youth would use this type of equipment?
I don't honestly know the numbers. I mean, I have talked with Naomi, who is the physiotherapist in the district, and I know that one of our bikes is now has been used at Bolinas on the track there, and I think that. So I can't answer that question. I just don't know how many.
I'm sure there's room for growth, certainly within the school population. Yeah. Trustee Austin, further?
Sorry.
I was just saying
Trustee
it goes
Austin?
to the resiliency and how well that bike is built if it was used on the Bolinas track.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah, exactly. That's a motocross ride.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting because we did have to have it repaired, and it took us about 2 months because the equipment has to come from Holland.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Those bikes are from Holland. But
supply chain issues.
But I think this is an area of which could really add to the development for kids with various physical challenges. So
Yeah.
I don't know what the numbers are, but we would really like to make a connection with the special ed department and have this conversation to see if it makes sense, if it's a doable, if it's something that's doable, because it's certainly, I know Naomi Domes came in And she was just blown away. She said, "Oh my God, there's so many things in here that her kids could avail themselves of." I think she takes them out swimming once a week. But
Yep.
so whether she,
Yep.
anyways.
Okay, Trustee Young, and then I think we'll move on to the rest of our agenda. Trustee Young.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the presentation, Bill.
Okay, thank you.
So it's 15 folks who have some impairment to their physical function. And would they come a number of hours a week? Like 3 times a week kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually 2 times a week.
Yeah.
And some people once a week. Some people use just the NeuroTracker equipment. Other
Right.
people use the full range of equipment in there, depending on their needs. And we hope that we can move the numbers up from 15 into that, because we do have that wait list of 35 that we would like to begin. And ultimately, I think the person we are contemplating as the personal trainer in that program, they have more experience and training than the person who did the pilot. So I think, and
You
we
could
have
grow it.
It would
Yeah.
take me too long to explain, but there's
Yeah.
2 or 3 other elements that we think will allow us to provide service to more people
Okay.
in there.
Okay,
Great.
so I've got a sense of that, and obviously, people appreciate this. I think from my perspective, the student access would be very, very
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll discuss the other stuff later.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
Bill. Thanks, Bill, very much. We do have at the unfinished business end of our agenda, the request by you of the extra 6 months, and we'll entertain it at the end. But at this point, thank you very much for coming tonight. I'm sorry that Diane couldn't make it tonight with you, and appreciate you expanding on some of the questions of trustees.
Yeah.
This
And
evening, and if you'd like to stay, you can stay, but if you want to move on, we can certainly apprise you of where things land at the end of the meeting. So
Okay.
thank you.
Much appreciated.
Sorry,
you.
I didn't mean to shock you this evening with the other news, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
So we'll turn to the agenda. The request of Trustee Austin to have a public question period. I do not see any public questions coming to the fore. And so, as I intimated before, or jumping around to myself there, Mount Ara Smith Teachers Association, Matt Wood has sent his regrets, QP 3570. Sherry Brown has sent requests. I do not see Deepak here as well this evening, Carrie and Angel or Jessica. So we'll move on to our first business arising from the minutes and the information regarding our consultation on the French Creek Elementary School, and I'll ask Mr. Amos to kick our discussion off there. Mr. Amos.
Thank you very much, Sheriff Lynn. Hopefully you can hear me okay, but so just for the public and for the board, just a reminder, as of September 26th, at the regular board meeting, the board announced that it was considering the disposition of a property known as French Creek Elementary and directed staff to seek community feedback. Effectively, we were able to do a 60-day consultation in October, November. Public notification was published in the local print media and websites, including both Parks Qualicum and Nanaimo Communities. The information, further information as it was required, not required, but as it percolated, we were able to share some of the school's history with folks that asked of it, and with schools and organizations to let them know in their local area to start the conversation. The written comments were requested to be submitted by November 30th, last week, effectively. So during that time, we heard about 34 individual submissions, and it included some level of interest from external organizations, including a rehabilitation center, also from an independent schooling was wondering about the facility and future use. But most of the opinions that came from the public was really about keeping the site in the public hands for community use. And I won't say it was wholeheartedly heard, but certainly some individuals weighed in and say, please don't sell the property off to private developers. General consensus appears to be to work with another public body, and again, recognizing that there's a few out there that could keep it in the hands of the public should there be an appetite for that, but recognizing that and again, most of the individuals weighed in on keeping the site as a community center and park space. Basically, they were what you're hearing is a clear understanding that the community recognizes the community value of the property based on its location next to the Coombs Market. For those who don't know, but it's also within the regional district's official community plan as the Coombs Village Center. So again, it's recognized as the hub of the community. So a couple of motions is what I'd like, and I think I'll get the chair to bring the motions in order. But two motions that will be coming before the board tonight. And again, not all they are, but what they're effectively is the ask of the board to declare that that the site is no longer needed for future educational purposes. And this is in concert with our bylaw, our board bylaw and AP 101 that speaks to the administrative procedures regarding disposition of property. And one of the items within that, as we go through this process, that for the board to consider and work through the next steps kind of thing, is the consideration of future educational needs of the school district and the effect of the disposal of same. So that's the first request of the board, is to make that public declaration. We know that we closed the site in 2014. And at that time, the board made a motion to close, or made a bylaw, because it's a bit more, it's got a higher level when it's done as a bylaw, understanding that they took the steps at that point to declare that the school's facility was closed for schooling. And so there was a bylaw done back then. This is really about just a motion on the table for the board to consider the future use for bylaw. The second motion that the chair will introduce is, again, part of the processes are internal, i.e. local decision, and some of the processes are external, i.e. provincial mandate. And so under the disposal of land and improvements ministerial order, one of the things that we need to do is ask the ministry for approval to dispose of the property in kind. And it goes through a little bit of a checklist that we have to do when we ask that, and when we ask of that from the minister. And it's not because the land is owned by us or not owned by the Crown. It's really about going through proper checks and balances to make sure that the public debate happens, that truly there is a consideration of other uses of the facility by the minister's hands, as it were. The wonder about other schools, other school authorities, I'll put it that way, or for other municipal agents and that kind of thing. So we basically hand a file to them saying, here's the checklist. We've confirmed the property background. We've confirmed the property description. We've confirmed that we have title on it, i.e. we own it outright. There's a piece that speaks to how did you engage the public? And again, that's what we did through our 60-day consultation. And so within that, I'll sort of include a summary to them of some of the responses that we've heard. And then ultimately it goes to minister for approval. Once that's done, we'll get a letter. And again, usually it's around a 90-day process that they'll take it upon themselves as they look, work through our work, as well as work through other agencies within the ministry in order to finally give us approval to dispose of it. And then it becomes a question to our board of what do we want to do with that approval. And so this doesn't tie the board's hands on any decision. It's really just us walking through each step in kind as we walk down this this line of inquiry is how I kind of framed it in terms of the next steps. But it does require these two motions to be on record so that we can go through the next steps.
Thanks, Mr. Amos.
Yep.
So I'll lead off and move that the Board of Education, School District San Qualicum, confirm that Lot A, District Lot 143, Nanus District Plan 15661, known as the former French Creek Elementary School property, will not be required for future educational purposes by the Board of Education. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Trustee Kurland. Questions, trustees? Trustee Austin.
Yeah, just a couple of things, questions and comments. One, it's just a little disappointing that may be a timing issue, but I wish these motions had actually been written into our public agenda so that when the public was looking at what was going to be on the meeting tonight, they could have seen that. What they got was public consultation results, but I wish they had had an opportunity to see that these motions were going to be on the table. So that's just a comment about that. The other thing around the educational use, at this point, I'm rather uncomfortable about unequivocally saying we don't have any educational use for this. I'm not sure we really know. I mean, I haven't been keeping up with the statistics with Berger, with the RDN, through their OCP and their whole population data that's come in. It very well may not be needed for an educational site, but it would be a real shame, if it were. So at this point, I'm a little uncomfortable saying, no, absolutely, we don't need it as an educational site. My question though, Ron, is, does the province, for this process, for that next motion coming forward, is one of the things on the checklist that it does not have an educational purpose anymore?
Yes. So, and again, I'm just reading.
I would suggest by the actual motion itself, we are declaring that it does not have for educational purposes.
Correct, because that's the motion itself is for our board purposes, but I'm just trying to find broader consultation, current use, circumstances leading to the Board of Education to make this ministerial approved to allow the pursuit of disposal. So they want it's framed as the board needs to do this, in essence, to ask for approval, because obviously if you see a value in an educational purpose, you wouldn't be asking for ministerial approval. So it is a requirement to make this public declaration. It's no different. It's no different than what we've done for the previous two sales that we did back in 2016. It's just an expectation. Like I said, it's one thing to close the site as you have, like I said, as you have done. It's another to basically eliminate that wonderment of the board of did they sell it out from under themselves kind of thing. So there is a public declaration that we do not need it anymore.
And that, that is for the board. But what you just read, I'm just trying to get this very clear in my mind, Ron. What you just read to me does not say it has to have that piece. Maybe it does. Maybe you can read it to me again. That's what I'm feeling.
I would interpret.
I'm feeling like I don't have enough information in order to vote confidently on this motion. That's what I'm feeling right now. It's come up. The first I sort of heard of this motion was a little earlier today, and I feel like I'm missing some information.
Well, I think again, the reason, the rationale for going down this, the public notification and the seeking of the ministerial approval is that you're effectively saying we've done what we needed to do and recognize that there is no value
I understand
for future use.
Yes, I understand that in order to get the ball rolling and what the process is, from the provincial perspective. I understand that. What I'm saying is, I don't feel I have enough information to vote confidently on this motion. I don't know what our statistics and the data are saying 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road. We very well may need an educational site. Maybe we won't, but I don't know. I haven't seen that data in quite a while. And I would like to also see the data from the RDN. They've been doing their OCP. I would like to see what their data is and where they got it and what their anticipation is. And so that's all I'm saying is I'm not comfortable voting on this particular motion right now for lack of information.
Thank you, Trustee Austin. Are there any other comments, trustees? I think this property has been not in use as an educational facility since 2015, and not aware of any particular growth and things like that would give us any confidence, plus the condition of the building and those aspects of where it would be able to house children again, I don't think is in our favor at this point. I do not see any other hands, trustees. Is there anyone else that would like to make any comment? So I will call a question. Are all those in favor with proceeding with recommendation 1? Contrary minded? Thank you, Trustee Austin. That is carried. The second motion we need to handle tonight to proceed down this path, that the board, and I will move that the Board of Education, School District 69, seek approval from the Ministry of Education to proceed with the disposition of Lot A, District Lot 143, Nanoose District Plan 15661, known as the French Creek Elementary School property. Seconder, please. I don't know, Trustee Young, if you have your hand up to second or a question. So I'll take Trustee Kellogg and Trustee Young, a question.
Yeah, a comment more than a question.
Okay.
On the feedback, and I didn't include the ones that are kind of community use, but on the feedback, 23 of 34 that I counted talked about community use. And going back 9 years, I went to French Creek for the final public consultation, because I was, at that point I was thinking of running, and there was all of the reconfiguration. Some
Yep.
people call it right sizing of the district. And I wasn't able to get to anything except to the meeting at French Creek because of my work schedule. I was so excited by the possibility of the community taking over French Creek in some way and making it into a real community hub. And over the last 9 years, I've talked to people in that area. Lots of people got lots of great ideas, but it seems like nobody is kind of taking the lead in doing this. And the school district, I think, is incapable of doing that. Just a second, sorry. And so, we can't make this happen. It's the community that needs to make it happen. And I'm so hopeful that this will allow the community to come together and make something happen for that community. And I hope as well that that will happen with our other buildings that we're not currently using for educational purposes, but especially for French Creek. So thank you, and thank you to everybody that weighed in on this. I think there's a real potential here.
Thank you, Trustee Young. Trustee Austin.
Thanks, Eve. Ron, could you speak a little bit to process if this motion were to go forward and it goes to the province and the province does its 90-day thing? What would the process look like after that? And I guess what I'm particularly speaking to is there more public engagement, and when would that happen?
So this motion speaks to directing staff to seek ministerial approval. And so in order for the next steps to happen, we'll send what will end up happening is I'll send off the checklist if if this motion passes, and it'll put it in the hands of the ministry. In the meantime, the board has the latitude thereafter to engage or ask staff to engage in some of these proposals that we've heard from, that we've shared with the board in terms of some of the wonders from the community. So in fairness, some of the community input was really just directed at, as an individual, they would like to see it retained but for a community park or community venue. In a couple of the in the submissions were, I won't say they were fulsome proposals, but they were enough that we were enough consideration that the board could direct staff to engage in that conversation. And so there were a couple of individuals that are asking to walk the site, as it were, in an effort by their own to wondering if they want to put in a proposal to the board should the property eventually be disposed of, as it were. And again, at this juncture, the board hasn't directed staff to put it list it, for example. The board hasn't directed staff to deal with any one individual or any one organization. All we're doing at this juncture is working it through the system, kind of thing. So we've still yet to hear from the First Nations. We've put out an appeal to them in terms of the engagement process, and so they have the right, obviously, to weigh in on what they have, some opinions that they might have for the site too. So the engagement can continue in a sense, but in terms of process, or you asked staff to do a 60-day consultation, and we've done that. Now we're just working through the next processes as the board feels comfortable moving this forward effectively. And ultimately, you're not going to, like, until we have ministerial approval, nothing's going to be asked of the board to dispose of it, obviously, because we don't have approval for
We
it.
don't have,
But that doesn't mean that we can't go through the actions of looking for proposals, kind of thing, or looking to what would be the best best proposal should the board continue that discussion once ministerial approval has been granted. So it does continue. And like I said, there's 3 proposals or potential proposals that we could hear from, that the board could hear from, should these organizations, these individuals want to engage a little bit more.
So I'm sorry again. So if I'm hearing you right, Ron, basically what you're saying is that it's the will of the board if there'll be further public consultation, depending at what stage the process is at. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep. Yeah, truth. I mean, this is your work. I'm just acting on your work, kind of thing. So, like, the board isn't committed to anything at this juncture. Again, back in September, the board asked staff to create a public notice period, as was required by, and again, actually, it's not through AP, or it's not through our AP, but it's just the right, transparent thing to do. The next steps, obviously, is in order for me to ask for ministerial approval, we need these certain motions. So the board isn't tied to anything at this point.
yeah, so
So I can't say it any other way. Yeah.
Yeah,
So the
to proceed,
board
we
still
need-
has some, the board
Yeah.
still has some decisions ahead should we get there. But in the
Yeah.
meantime, the work that I'm asking for with the second motion is just for me to ask for ministerial approval. But it's still subject to anything that the board wants to do.
Okay, thank you for that, Ron. That has cleared a few things up for me. I will just say, at this point, though, I understand, we have to get, we want to get moving forward with the process, and that this is part of the process. I will just say now that I probably can't vote in favor of this motion in light of not voting in favor of the previous motion, and I feel that they are tied together. So I'm just giving everyone that heads up.
Thank you, Trustee Austin. Thank you, Mr. Amos, as well for answering our questions. I don't see any more hands up on behalf of trustees, so I've moved this. Trustee Keller has seconded this, and the motion reads again that the Board of Education, School 69, Qualicum, seek approval from the Ministry of Education to proceed with the disposition of Lot A, District Lot 143, Nanoose District Plan 15661, known as the former French Creek Elementary School property. Call a question, trustees. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Trustee Austin, thank you. The motion is carried. So our next steps will take some time, upward of I think Secretary Treasurer Amos has indicated the ministry could be up to 90 days. So that's 3 months to take the next steps. But people who and or entities that have expressed interest may be doing walkabouts the property and have more information at their hands to make further proposals to us. Mr. Amos.
Sorry. Yeah, and I just anecdotally just remind the board that there was a property when I first came into the district, old Arrington site it was known as. And just for clarity, it was it had ministerial approval for disposition for about 8 years before it was finally sold. Because if you and again, I'm not trying to recreate the wheel, but it was listed 2 and 3 times. So even ministerial approval with the approval doesn't mean the board either has to act on that approval or can act on it, given the fact that they couldn't at that time find a buyer, as it were. So process.
8 years. My goodness. I was there for the whole thing. Oh, you joy. Okay, thank you very much, one and all. Good, thoughtful discussion. So now we move to the superintendent's report. Miss Dr. Jory, update on your activities.
Thank you, Chair Flynn. Thank you, Chair Flynn. Greetings, everyone. Esquel. I'll start with an update on student achievement. I mentioned at the Ministry Day session that provincial completion rates have been delayed due to some technical difficulties. The provincial results are still not available, and I cannot see how other districts have done, but our own ministry data repository has been updated, so I can share information regarding our students. I am pleased to inform all of you that our resident students and Indigenous students' 6-year grad rates have each moved up slightly, and through the mathematical function of rounding, we can call it 1% each. After significant gains last year, a result that holds up or even improves should be considered good news. We did see a slight drop in our 6-year results for students with diverse abilities, though the actual percentage is still the second highest we have seen in this district. We also saw encouraging results with our on-reserve students and children in care, though those numbers will not be shared publicly as the cohorts are small enough to require masking. Overall, I see this as a positive step towards equity and consider the results to be affirming of our ever-evolving practice from kindergarten right through grade 12. As discussed throughout our strategic planning process and through the beginning stages of our rollout, the importance of meaningful graduation has been and will continue to be our primary focus, and I hope that everyone in the system takes pride in each positive milestone that we pass in our journey. On December 1st, we hosted another Ministry Day session at KSS. It was a privilege to hear from Chief Michael Berkalma of the Qualicum First Nations, who's pleased to speak in front of all of our staff for the first time ever. I was glad to have a chance to go over the goals of the strategic plan and speak more specifically about the connection with the First Peoples principles of learning. We then heard from Dr. Dustin Louie, our keynote, about reconciliation and bias, and I believe his thoughtful messages landed well with both the morning and afternoon audiences. In recent weeks, we've been working on a review of our learning support program. A survey was issued to staff some weeks ago, and the data received along with our district roles and responsibilities chart was the topic of focus group discussions with groups of teachers from 3 schools, a group of EAs and workers, a large group of learning resource teachers. All had a chance to weigh in. Several students were also interviewed, and all that information was shared with principals and vice principals who also contributed their own feedback. Our intention is to use this information to create an operational plan for learning support, which will be fully aligned with the district strategic plan and provide a vision for the program, clarify common language, generate outcomes using the SET model, and give an updated roles and responsibilities matrix for staff, all to be brought to the board hopefully in February or March of this coming year. As mentioned last month and at the Ministry Day session, we are looking forward to considering later start times around the district, noting the research about student learning and engagement, the universal challenges we're all facing with attendance, our strong district interest in equity, as well as a consideration of student safety on dark winter mornings. It is certainly time to have this conversation. My intention is to launch a webpage in the new year with the rationale for change, links to research, then a link to a forum where staff and parents can offer feedback. I think this is also another opportunity to utilize student voice in our schools and make sure we're getting all the information we need to best improve outcomes for our students. We do recognize that people's lives often revolve around school start and end times, so it is critical that we understand the issues and do what we can to mitigate challenges that might be raised around student supervision and childcare, for example, before we make any further steps. I will say this though, we have some students in our rural areas who catch buses prior to 7 a.m. and I think we would all like to offer some relief to those families if we possibly can. On a final note, I hope everyone will have a chance to enjoy a winter concert or two around the school district in the next 2 weeks. I am reminding our staff that while this is generally seen as a fun and exciting time of the year, that not all of our families celebrate Christmas, and it is our responsibility to provide an inclusive learning environment where everyone feels they belong, and that our public-facing communications need to respect that diversity. At a recent meeting, I also raised the possibility of other types of performances, perhaps in entirely other seasons, offering that all the beauty and joy and cuteness that we love to experience could be found in any of the million or so other topics and songs at our disposal, and that I cannot possibly be the only person who might just find that refreshing. Just a thought, folks. Please, no jokes. No jokes about my heart being 2 sizes too small. It is just the right size. I'll have you all know. Thank you again to all our staff for their hard work and enthusiasm this December. Well done, everyone. HiSEPCA, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tory. Trustees, any queries and questions? We can get, I'd love to see some Hanukkah celebrations and dreidels and things like that. Latkes, went to one on last Sunday. It was just wonderful. Any questions?
Especially latkes, eh?
Yeah, especially the latkes. Any questions of our superintendent? Trustee Kurland.
No questions. Just a thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
Well said.
indeed. Indeed. A very interesting place that we can approach some new thinking on. Educational programs updates then to our dynamic team of Associate Superintendent Ms. Wilson and Director of Instruction Rudy Terpstra. Over to you guys. You tag team it different every time, so I leave it to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair Flynn. Just a few short updates from me. One is just want to remind everyone that most of the learning updates have gone home, and if they haven't made it home yet, they'll be home by early next week. And just a reminder, we're in the new reporting order, and a couple of the big changes in our new reporting order. And as everyone knows and has heard here a lot, our district was part of a pilot program for a long years. Our practices in giving letter grades haven't existed in over 30 years at elementary. But within the new report, one of the big changes across K-12 was student goal setting, and then also core competency reflections. And again, core competency reflections, we've been doing K-9, and we've been talking about core competencies in 10 to 12 for a lot of years. But now we are formalizing the communication home on those two pieces. And as well as you might remember in the old reporting order, the use of incomplete or the I standing is now incomplete evidence of learning. Just a slight adjustment in the language, but also all of it with a plan as it used to be to give students and families a path to success. We did have a assessment and evaluation and communicating student learning committee this month. And again, we got feedback from all of the schools and teachers about the new reporting order and the platform in MyEd that we're using. We also were able to share learning on how schools are addressing the goal setting with their students and reporting that to homes. Yesterday, I think it's yesterday, Monday, we also had a tech committee. And one of the big pieces of work that we will be doing there is to align our goals with the new strategic plan and continue the work of technology supporting not only the work in our district, just like this meeting, but also the learning that goes on in our district for our students. And then the last thing I wanted to just share with everyone is on the learning front, we had, I've mentioned a couple times, with all of our grade 9 teachers in all 4 of our schools, we invited a team after we did a literacy assessment in grade 9. It was reading article choice. And then we assessed those as a team. And then we took the team of teachers to Dover Bay this last week and worked with Leighton Schnellert, who I think most of you are familiar with. But we did learning really focused on the middle years, not only recognizing the differences in our middle years and to quote Dr. Schnellert, the middle years besides grade 1 are the biggest times of change for our students, and recognizing that, but also how to make engagement learning, or learning engaging, and also to you know, make it exciting and offering choice for students. So our teachers got the learning, then we actually went in classrooms and watched a co-taught model in what's called a learning round. And we're happy to say that in February, Bolinas is going to host the next session of learning rounds with the other 2 districts. And then finally, the day's capped off with a debrief of what was observed and practices that we can bring into our classroom. It was a great event in that teachers were talking about it and sharing that with their colleagues when they got back to their schools. So that's it for me, and I'll pass it to Ms. Wilson.
Hello. Just a couple of updates for myself. We had our curriculum implementation advisory committee meeting yesterday. We're really short educators, teachers, I should say, because there's lots of educators on the committee, but there's not enough teachers. So that's something that the local union president and I are working on. It is part of our contract with the local union to have a SEAC committee. And we miss teachers not having a voice there. And so we really need to have teachers there. One of the things that we're trying to do is look at the big picture, big items across our district, including our strategic plan and how we make sure we funnel everything that we're doing and how it's aligning with our strategic plan. So good conversations, but not as many faces around the table that need to be there. Really want to acknowledge the hard work that our schools are doing at this time of year. As Superintendent Dory talked about, it sometimes can be a really challenging time of year for some of our families, and not everybody celebrates in the same way as your neighbors or other family members do. So we see some behavior sometimes from our kiddos that are not sure how to deal with either changing parts of their lives or differences that go on at home around routines and procedures and things like that. And I know our schools are working really hard to make sure we maintain this routines and procedures for the next 2 weeks so that it helps kiddos work through that. Also want to acknowledge that we are working on 75 families with our community agency, getting our community volunteers, I should say, they're not an agency, getting a backpack, which is a big Christmas hamper. As you know, they get pajamas, gifts, groceries, gift cards, all kinds of things from our community that we're also supporting through Feeding Futures this year. Sheila's working closely with the schools and liaisoning with Virginia, who is the lead person on that particular initiative. And our families really appreciate it. They really look forward to it. we're so widely known that we even had a family from Nanaimo phone us and ask whether they could be part of our backpack program. And so we directed them onto the supports and services that they could receive in Nanaimo, but they'd heard what a great job that community group do. As we move back into January, when we return from the winter break, it's that time of year when we start thinking about the next year as well. And so kindergarten registration starts in January, which it's hard to believe, right? We do our notification out in our newspaper. We start having cross-boundary conversations, and I know you'll hear from our Secretary Treasurer around the budget conversations that will come up. So it's excitement as we move into the new year. We did have our kindergarten meeting this past week with all of our kindergarten teachers, which is always a highlight. We pulled together the information from the snapshot and did a learning opportunity for all of our kindergarten teachers around speech and language, occupational therapy, supports that were the themes that you heard at the Ed Committee that was presented. And so it was that shared learning and that shared opportunity to come together. We're also in the year of the EDI, which is the Early Development Indicator, so that will take place in January. Information will be going home either immediately after the winter break or prior to the winter break to let families know that we'll be doing that. One on a good note that we're really excited, Director Terpstra and I have been working on what can the staffing look like to align with the assessment practices that we've just talked about in terms of reading, writing, and numeracy. And so we will be putting some postings out. Not sure what they're going to look like yet. We are working with the local, but it will be in terms of staffing that's come from the amended budget to support the strategic priorities around the assessments that we've talked about. So stay tuned for that. As soon as we get more details, we'll be able to share what that looks like and the planning around that for January, but we're really excited about that additional staffing that will go into our system to support.
Wow, we're already talking January. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. We have to get through the winter break. Trustee Kurland and then Trustee Kellogg, you have comments, questions?
Yeah. So, Jillian, do you have any theories as to why the SEAC participation is so low with teachers? Without, incriminating any.
I think we have several committees, and so wondering around how do we amalgamate some of those committees. Teachers are very busy. It's an after school meeting, and so that may be a deterrent. But I want to talk about the composition because I don't think the composition of the committee itself leads to the numbers that we need in that. So that's a conversation we need to have with our local. It's old language in the collective agreement. We still have middle school. So I think focusing on how we can get a bigger, larger cross section of educators to have voice, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. I know that pizza doesn't work with teachers.
Pizza. No, not even. No,
anyway,
not that.
Thanks, Jillian.
Trustee Kellogg.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm really proud to be part of an organization that is so thoughtful towards families that don't have as much as other families do, and that we've got these great people that work for our organization that organize the backpack program, and I just really am. I'm very proud to be involved in something, even though I don't play a part in that area. That's kind of where my heart is. I want everybody to have something, and I just want to say thank you to all the people that are involved. Last year, I know that my condo complex got involved with KSS on the food drive, and I know there's people in here that donate to the backpack program. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, those that donate, those that work the program, and yeah. I just want everybody to have something through the holidays.
It's amazing. And if you want to fill your hearts, go to Qualicum Commons next on the 22nd. I don't know if that's Wednesday or Thursday. I think it's a Thursday. And it's scheduled pickups. It might be the Thursday. I'll get the date to trustees. What you will see is the excitement of the people that get the opportunity to deliver to the families. And, we maintain confidentiality and respect. We don't know who families are, but we do the drop-offs, and just the energy around the room about knowing that they're doing something that's really, really important and really meaningful is very uplifting. It's what this time of year is about, the giving.
Yeah, it's very, very strong program. That's something to be proud of for sure. Seeing no further questions from trustees, I'll call on Mr. Amos and in your package, page 12, you can have a look at the budget schedule for 23, 24. It's actually 20, yeah, I guess, no, 24, 25 it will be. So maybe there's a little date correction there. 24, 25 is upon us. Mr. Amos.
Yeah, yes, the schedule is correct. The agenda item is wrong. But anyway, so yeah, it's okay. 24, 25. And just to remind the board that we're next month by the end of February, we'll be bringing to you the amended budget process. So a reminder that after the counts are done in September for student count, we get the ministry recalculated funding formula, and we'll know about, not formula, we'll get the recalc announcement at the end of this week, and then that sort of starts up the amended budget process, to which we've got some plans for it, and we'll share that with the board now that once we know the funding is committed. But again, that will close out our amended process. We'll bring that to the board in January, February for a motion to accept, so that we can put 25, 23, 24 effectively from a budget perspective, put that to bed. And then at the same time, we're starting up once again the 24, 25 budget process. And that's what you're looking at before you in terms of the schedule and how it kind of rolls into the next planning process. So January, February, we're starting to look at the staffing and the projections. Some of those things go to the ministry for their enrollment counts projections that will feed into the announcement in March. But in the meantime, when we're hearing that, as we've always done, we've gone out to the public, to our partner groups, to seek their to have a conversation with them. And a couple of things that we've done in the last couple of years that has allowed for a broader engagement, I'll put it that way. Going to Teams, I think, has helped us certainly reach more parents than otherwise would have come, and staff the same. Likewise, the survey that we'll send out in early or January is another method that basically gets to more people so that more people have a voice in it. And again, but other than that, the process is relatively the same as it has been for the last couple of years, with the exception of going on Teams. So we do the consultative process in February effectively. We wait to hear the funding announcement in March, and generally speaking, then we'll bring back that information with what we've heard and bring it back to the stakeholders in basically April. For an engaged process, and then we'll bring something to the board in April should they want to pass the amended, or at that point the preliminary budget. Yeah. So that's the cycle. It's before you for information. If there's any questions, I'll please take them.
Trustee Austin.
Just thanks, Ron, for this. I appreciate the little synopsis of what each meeting is for. I think that helps. I was pleased to see that there are some in-person ones at Qualicum Commons. I do think that's important. But I do understand we do have, a bigger uptake of participants generally when it's online. That's just too bad, but it's nice to see that there is a little bit of a blend, trying to get a little bit of a blend in there. So thank you very much for that. And I was just going to suggest, if possible, when this goes on our website, when it goes out to our schools, things like that, if maybe in bold letters at the bottom or something, it can be said, just reiterated that if you have questions or comments and cannot attend a meeting, please email that in, just so that people know that it's not just these meetings, that people can also be emailing in between the meetings as well. Is that right?
Could be done. Yeah, should be done.
I'm just adding that to the bottom. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Amos, for that. And sorry, Trustee Young.
Definitely on the next topic, there's some date wrong dates on the finance and operations, unless we want to meet on Saturday. Finance and operations policy and ed committee. And this is because I was updating my own little calendar. It's actually the 15th for finance and operations and policy, and the 16th for ed committee, unless I'm wrong and working on a wrong calendar.
Okay, well, we could all go look to our calendars, I guess, but just to confirm,
Elaine. It's the 15th.
It's the
15
15th.
15 looks
Yeah.
right.
15th
Yep.
and 16th.
Yeah, 15th and 16th. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Trustee Austin, do you have?
Our board meeting it's because it's a long month, I think, and the first begins on a Monday, so it actually has the 5 Mondays in it, and our board meeting is always the 4th Tuesday. Is that right? Yeah. So
yeah,
I think
so
that's
it's the
why
23rd. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why I got a little
Yeah.
confused.
Yeah.
Because it's just a long month, and the first is on a Monday, so makes everything a little.
So that will move us through the next 3 items. Finance and Operations Committee of the Whole, there's no report, but the next meeting will be Monday, January 15th, 10:30. Policy Committee of the Whole meeting will be Monday, January 15th at 1. And the Education Committee of the Whole will be the 16th at 2:30. There are no reports from representative or outside. Or Julie, do you have your hand up for another purpose?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Sorry.
Nope, just don't want to miss you. No reports from outside organization, no trustee items under new and unfinished business.
So
In
that's
anticipation.
also a conflict with the Indigenous Advisory Committee on the 15th Monday, so I won't be at the finance and operations.
Okay.
Just to let you
Yep.
know.
Okay. Thanks. Further to the presentation from Mr. Preston, Fitness for All, or otherwise really known as the Brain Wellness Project at Qualicum Commons. I would move the motion, the Board of Education, School District 69 Qualicum extend its approval for the Brain Wellness Project by the Qualicum Community Education and Wellness Society to utilize room 12 at the Qualicum Commons at no charge for an additional 6 months from January 2024 to June 30th, 2024. After which time the organization will be required to start paying a monthly rental fee as previously agreed. The extension really of the 3 months was because they really didn't inhabit the space for 3 months. They were slow in being able to get everything up and organized. So this is honoring a commitment that they would have a year in their facility. And as you heard from Bill's presentation, they're going to move into phase 2 and have plans for other more extended versions and possibly in a different place after that. But that doesn't preclude the original agreement, which was that they would start to pay rent after the year. So the extension really is to honor that they had kind of a slower start at the beginning and need the extra time to do some more work in that space. So I've moved the motion. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Trustee Kurland. Questions, Trustee Young?
Yeah, so I wasn't in favor of this at the beginning, and when we first looked at this, there's no doubt that this is a useful program. There's no question about it. I mean, I know enough about brain development to know that it's really important. And I'm okay with the number of people and so on and so forth. I guess my 2 sticking points were around how that would sit with the tenants, whether some of the tenants would feel like, how come they get it free, we don't get it free, and also that it set a precedent. I'm not so worried about precedent anymore, but have we had any feedback from tenants that would indicate that we're having a situation where some people are feeling that they're being treated differently?
I'd have to defer to Mr. Amos or Mr. Monroe. I haven't seen any kickback or heard of kickback, so
And yeah, and nothing's come forward to myself or our department that handles the tenants and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
know of nothing, and I don't know that anyone actually that is there knows that they're getting a break.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Trustee Austin.
Yeah, thank you. Sort of along that vein, I am in full support of the extension, but I did just want to touch base with Phil because I see he's on the call. Bill mentioned Dave, the custodian. Has there been any issues from the operations or maintenance perspective?
No, none that I'm aware of, and it's nice to hear positive remarks about a custodian in a facility, but there's been nothing from that front about the tenant.
Great, thank you.
I think it's I would consider it low impact use if it's 5 to maybe 15 participants with some adults for safety and otherwise. It's not 30. It's not 30 kids running to the bathroom and around the halls and running crayons along the wall.
Yeah. No, if I recall, it's because some of the equipment is outside equipment, and so at the very beginning of this, there was just a concern of if it's outside equipment coming in and getting on the floor.
Okay.
That's what,
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't think that doesn't sound like an issue at all. So great.
Yep. Seeing no further questions, trustees, it's a long motion. I don't know if I want to read it again at this hour, but it was moved by myself, seconded by Trustee Kurland. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Extension basically of 6 months. Thank you very much, trustees. All in favor, carried. And follow up, and I'll defer to Trustee Austin, who wished to have this on the agenda on the follow up to the Qualicum Woods ABGUS presentation. What would you be proposing, Trustee Austin?
Well, I just think because we had presenters come to our regular board meeting, in terms of process, it makes sense to have a response that comes from out of our regular board meeting, whether we do it this month or next month or whenever people want to do that, and have the discussion around that.
Okay, we're here now, and I think that trustees receive the information as information, are grateful for the information, and to simply acknowledge that is the extent to which I have heard from others to this point. I don't hear of any declarations of activity or actions along the vein of the presentation, rather to just thank them for the information, and we will be aware of it. Have I summarized correctly or otherwise?
Because they did make a request, and I just think it's to respond to the request. And the request is that we write a letter to the town or
no.
Sorry,
okay, Chair.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just through the chair, if you review your minutes, it kind of gives a lens to what was said, and I'll just read the minutes that are in this agenda, so it's quite appropriate. They requested that the board support them in their efforts to advocate to the town of Qualicum Beach and the Minister of Transport to enact changes by switching to offering unleaded fuel in the Qualicum Beach Airport, and that the flight path be altered away from the Arrowview Elementary School when it is safe to do so. So that was their approach to the board.
Okay, so my bad. They didn't ask, directly for a letter. They asked us to, though, help them in their where see, I just missed it. But they did ask for that we support them. And as short of us, going out waving signs or something, a letter seems to be the obvious thing. That's where my mind went to. But I do think that because they did have an ask that we support them, from my perspective, I think we should have a response out from the public board meeting as well.
To which end I would ask then, is the board in support of the argument that they made that the flight path be changed and otherwise? I think there was certainly people who felt that that information was valuable and interesting, but things could change and other things out of our control, as in the business of education would be able to not really add a lot to the argument by taking a stand or presenting anything contrary to that. Trustee Kurland.
Yeah, well, you know my position on it. It's not our purview to do that, to get involved with the ratepayers of Qualicum Woods, changing the flight path, which is where it started, and then they got on the non-fuel issue or non-leaded fuel issue. So no, it's not our concern. I mean, if they're really concerned about lead, then they should get, the medical health officer to look at it. And also, the data that was sent to us was a photograph of an airport in San Jose with an airport, or a school in San Jose with an airport behind it. And, it's misleading. So anyway, I don't feel as though that it's our concern right now. Certainly lead and fuel is everybody's concern. There's also a lot of toxins in every single vehicle on the road, but I don't think that this is for us to take on. If, they need to deal with it with the town as the operator at the airport.
Thank you, Trustee Kurland. Trustee Kellogg.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm not sure that their flight path is accurate. And they never brought any proof that it actually does go over Arrowview. And I don't think it does, but their suggestion that the flight path be changed to go along the railway tracks would mean that it would be going over Qualicum Secondary. So for those reasons, I'm not in favor of us sending a letter to the town of Qualicum.
Thank you, Trustee Kellogg. Trustee Austin again.
Thank you for entertaining this, trustees, and making it a matter of public record. I found it a very fascinating and interesting presentation. I would like actually to have follow-up, perhaps not a letter at this point, but it certainly has piqued my interest in terms of things like contaminants in the soil. I actually think that's something we should be doing at a number of our sites rather regularly. And if it shows higher levels at one site perhaps than another, then those are questions we should be asking. Why is it? And then carry on from there. Just as we test our water, I think we should be testing our soil, particularly at elementary schools. There's a lot of dirt that ends up in mouths at the elementary level. So for me, it's really piqued my interest. Just from what I heard, just maybe we heard differently, Carol, but from what I heard Todd speak, that because you did mention that, wouldn't that just be, if you change the flight path, be creating a problem at one of the other schools? What I heard of his response was, no, it does not. It puts KSS out of that 0.6 kilometer limit. That's what I heard him say, but that's what I mean. I found it really interesting. And from my perspective, I think it's worth a little more investigation. And at the very least, or at least stimulated me to consider, to look at our soils at our different sites and see what levels they're at, because we don't know. There's an awful lot of toxins in the environment, and I think it would be really good information to have. So though I think people aren't necessarily at the place to write a letter at this point, from my perspective, I think it's worth a little more research and consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Austin. Trustee Young.
Yeah, I think we do need to respond to them because they did have an ask, and basically we can respond with after considerable, and I think it's been considerable discussion. We will take no further action in terms of supporting, however we want to put it, supporting that. However, I do think that Trustee Austin has a point. I also think there's a ton of toxins around, and whether it's lead from airplanes or lead from cars, in the 50s, or microwaves from cell towers or whatever. It's just, to me, it's kind of all the same stuff. But, I'd be curious to see how much it would cost us to do soil sampling, maybe at a couple of our schools each year, and just see, okay, well, what are we seeing there? And I don't know if Mr. Monroe or Mr. Amos might have a sense of that, but I don't think it's a bad idea.
Okay, I think that's a different pathway to go down and a different topic altogether, and possibly the Education Committee of the whole might entertain that whole discussion under the climate action and climate agenda item that is as a standing item on your agendas. I can say the health regulations require us to do the water sampling and things like that, and they come and do it, and that is a matter of course. Who pays for this and how it's administered and things like that is some minutia that maybe one trustee or a few would like to take on. I think we've got a lot of activity on our senior staff's plate for lots of other things going on in the district to understand what contaminants are in our soils, but worthy of doing more research and more thinking. And I think we best maybe have a more fulsome discussion at the committee of the whole for the Education Committee of the whole. Trustee Kurland.
Great. Yeah, well, I think if you want to do that, then maybe you could write a letter to the medical health officer and get them to do some samples, because we get the samples and we look at the data and what are we going to do with it? You know what I mean? It's like, then we have to have somebody who's going to say, well, that's bad or that's good. It's not really our, our jurisdiction. It's the medical health officer. And if we have some reason to believe that there is some problems there, sure. I mean, as far as doing research about, the airport and the lead, I've got 1,400 hours of research doing that, and I think that I'm pretty clear on what the effects are and where aviation is going. Like there's two at least types of fuel that do not use lead. And there's a reason why lead was put in the fuel in the first place. I'm not going to go into it. But, there's at least two types of fuel that can be accessed that no longer use lead. And if that's the concern, then, these people should be lobbying the town, which is going to put in a new tank for that. And I suspect that the original problem was noise abatement and that they got on the lead afterward. That's what the gentleman told me from the Ratepayers Association from Qualicum Woods, that their original thing was noise abatement. And the flight path was changed to go straight out from 290 to alter to 210 on the compass. It was changed to be straight out for 2 nautical miles at 1,000 feet, and was done that because now there's an instrument approach into Qualicum. And so that's why it's now where it is. So they're not going to change that.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, let's not get down this rabbit hole too far. Trustee Austin.
Oh, I was just going to say thanks, Barry, for sort of making my argument that if there's a concern, or a question, then sure, let's go to the public health and say we have a question where we want to know. There's been questions raised around that there might be potentially be lead coming from the planes.
Sure.
And so do that. I mean, I don't care what route we go. I just think it's very interesting, and I think you'd need that sort of cross section of samples. But to me it's a jumping off point.
Great, Trustee Kellogg.
So I just wanted to, Karen just sent an email, and it's the town of Qualicum wants to look at opportunities in establishing a battery charging station for electric planes at the Qualicum Beach Airport. So
there you go.
That may be down the road.
Peter can charge up. We can put the buses there too.
Yeah, and they've made the first flight. Virgin Air's made the first flight cooking oil. So there we go.
There you
The
go.
times they are
Things
changing.
changing.
Yeah.
The French fry airplane.
Yeah, French fry airplane. Okay, I think we'll find some different routes and different ideas on that topic that we can further pursue in another arena. And at this point, I think, are you wishing to speak again, Carol, or?
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah, okay, you had your hand up. That old hand gets us in trouble every time. So in closing, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Our final meeting before winter break. Everyone have a safe, enjoyable time with family and friends over the next few weeks. We have lots of music to listen to, and then into January and kindergarten registration and a few other things. It's just, where does the calendar go? So thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and happy and safe holidays to everybody.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.